It's what we do. Absolutely it is. Good morning, everybody. How are y'all? Oh, that was a really good morning. Then I made you take personal investment in your answer. You were like, I'm good. It's all right. How are we doing this morning? Good. For those of you that remember me, I am a teacher. I expect feedback from my crowd. That keeps me going. Otherwise, I really drag down. Then I'm just like, you know what? Cut 20 pages. We're out of here. Let's go to lunch, okay? So if that's your goal, stay silent and don't interact with me at all, right? If you actually want to be here and have some truth this morning, let's do that together too. I was just told by a youth, though, after my first sermon that my message is unforgivable, was the word that they used. We're talking about elevating next generation ministries, and so I'm going to say some words today that are going to make teens be like, oh my gosh, that's the most cringe human being on the face of the earth, and every adult in here is going to be like, what? But I'm told that's what made it unforgivable. So if that's the worst that we dive into, I think we're in good shape today, so we're going to keep on moving here. I also like to get a feel for my audience. I got a good front row up here, good, so if I need volunteers, I'm either going to call from here or the back row. Just so you all know, back row, you're not out of this. So I'm looking at you back there, and you all are dodging my looks now. You're trying to avoid my eye contact. But if we need some volunteers, I'm going to be calling on you guys today, okay? First, before we get started, I need to make a confession to you all, okay? Something that I'm not super proud of, something that I think for sure is going to spark feelings in almost everybody in this room, because we all have very strong feelings about the struggle that I'm about to share with you, all right? Oh, this is hard. I didn't think it was going to be this hard. I'm a millennial. And all of you just got very strong feelings, one way or another, about me. Some of you have already discredited me and said, I'm not even going to listen to this guy. Who is he? Others of you are like, I don't even know what that means, but it's okay. We're going to navigate it together, all right? I just point that out because we are in kind of a transitional phase as millennials, right? We have been the group that forever has been the group kind of growing and emerging, and now most of us are like 40 to 25. We're in that group of people who are starting to kind of, sorry everybody else, take over the world a little bit, right? We're becoming leaders in our companies. We're becoming leaders across the board. And so it's really important to understand a little bit about us, because today's topic, elevating our next generation of ministries, you got to know and understand a little bit about who we are, okay? So please know today as we go through this message, I'm going to give a few disclaimers because it's so important that I do. Please know today that as we are talking about our next generations, we are talking about those generations as the collective, not the exceptions to the rule, okay? Are there exceptions to every rule? Yes. Are you supposed to go the speed limit? Yes. What if your wife is in labor and you're on your way to the hospital? Are you going to go the speed limit? No, there's an exception to that rule, right? Officers, are you going to pull that person over still? Yep, but it's still an exception to the rule, okay? So today we're talking about that broad generality, all right? And in order to elevate our next gen ministries, or elevate our next generation into ministry, we need to fully engage the next generation in authentic, Christ-following discipleship. If we are going to elevate our next-gen ministries, we need to fully engage the next generation in authentic, Christ-following discipleship. So for today, I'm not going to be talking a lot about like ministries that we offer, and this isn't a sales pitch. I'm going to be talking a lot more about what are the steps and the processes that we all need to collectively dive into to actively engage those in that age group, 40 on down, we're going to take a look at that here in a second, in our ministries. You might be sitting here asking, why is this even important? Well, one, it's what we do, right? It is what we're about here at Junction City Church of the Nazarene, because we know and understand a very, very profound truth. Every church is one generation away from extinction. Every church is one generation away from extinction, meaning if we don't reach the next generation with the message of truth from Jesus, there is no more church. Okay? That's why it's so important for us to dive into this today so that we can begin to understand what is my role and what is my responsibility in that engagement process, okay? In order to do that, though, we first need to start looking at our generations and see kind of who we're talking about here. So I have a graphic up here that shows the 7 current living generations and the percentage of people in each of those generations, okay? Is that one coming up? There it is, perfect. So all the way over on the far left, that very small percentage is unfortunately the people left from our greatest generation. I got to experience and talk to some amazing people from that generation, okay? These are the generations born kind of post-World War I, pre-World War II. They went through some stuff, y'all, and unfortunately there's only about 0.13% of the world population left with that amazing group of people. Next to them is the silent generation, born kind of during the workings and the play out of World War II. The baby boomers, born immediately after World War II. Generation X, that's where my parents would fall into, who were born kind of in that Vietnam 70s, 80s realm and arena. Generation Y, or the millennial generation, that's me right there, born in the 80s to the 90s. Generation Z, born in the late 90s to the mid-2010s. And then Generation Alpha is our real youngsters right now, those who are 10 and under. Okay? So as we're talking about the next generation, I want us to look here, and I want you to do some quick math if you can. Add up the greatest generation to Generation X. Let's see who can do quick mental math really quickly. Every teacher friend, I'm looking at you to see if you're going to get quick math. Yeah. 45.49% in those four generations. 49.45%. So less than half of the current world population is in those generations that are 41 years and older at this current moment. But here's the reality, y'all. That 45.49% currently holds 70% of the leadership roles within every church across the globe. 49%, less than half of the population, is doing 70% of the missional work that needs to be done to reach our world for Jesus. To me, that is baffling. Because that means of the remaining 55%, which is what I'm going to call next gen here, of millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha. By the way, baby boomers were always the biggest generation in history, right? Look at millennials. A little bit higher, right? We are the largest generation in history now, okay? 55% of people are only taking accountability for 30% of the current mission of Jesus, okay? That dynamic needs to shift. Otherwise, in just 20, 30, 40 years, when so unfortunately, many of our greatest generation, silent generation, boomers, and Gen X are gone, who is going to be carrying the load and championing the mission? Okay, that's what we have to consider here today. So, how can we empower, engage, and equip the next generation in the mission of Jesus? J.P. Pokluda is an author and pastor down in Dallas, Texas. He wrote a couple good books. One is called Welcome to Adulting. One is called Welcoming the Next Generation to Church. I'm going to pull a lot from him today, so you're going to hear his name a lot. He took over a ministry in Dallas about 20 years ago, or about 15 years ago now, called The Porch. It was a young adult ministry, and it was running like 20, 30 people when he took it over. It now runs an average of 4,000 young adults weekly over 8 sessions. Okay, he has grown this into a very sustainable ministry because he's picked up on some principles about how to best engage that next generation in the gospel. And here's what he says here. You know, millennials and the generations following them are literally the future. The truth is undeniable, but you aren't sure how to reach them. And if you're not reaching them, there is no future for your church. I'm not trying to be harsh here. It's really just a math problem. If young people aren't joining and leading in your church, eventually your church will die. Okay? He's going to say a lot of things today that you're going to be like, oh, trust me, I'm too, okay? Don't be mad at me. I'll give you his personal home address, and you can write him a letter down in Texas, and we'll see if he reads it and writes you back or not, okay? But in order for us to understand how we reach this next generation, we need to understand a little bit about who this generation is. So there was a group called the Deloitte Group. They're very similar to like the Gallup organization. They do polls of people in all these different arenas and realms to try to understand pattern and trends among groups of people. So in 2024, earlier this year, I think it was right around March if I remember correctly, they surveyed 22,400 and some odd millennial and Gen Zers, and they tried to look for what are the trends and the things that make this group of people tick. And here's what they found. Here's some of their findings here. Okay? 1, respondents are cautiously optimistic about the economy and their personal finances, but uncertainty remains. Okay? So this group in general feels okay about money. All right? They don't feel great about it, and they're a little hesitant about it. Environmental sustainability drives career decisions and consumer behaviors. Meaning, if they go to apply for a company, they're probably going to ask the question, what are you doing to help with the environment? And if you don't have an answer for that, they're probably not going to work for your company. That's how many of them believe in that. They believe that their purpose influences workplace satisfaction. So they're like, there's something that I'm about. I'm about this, right? We're going to dive into all of that here in a little bit. But if my workplace doesn't align with what I believe, I'm not going to work there. There isn't really a sense of loyalty to work anymore. There's a sense of loyalty to my purpose and myself among these generations. Okay? Work-life balance and flexibility remain important. All right? So this group is highly, highly, highly attuned to, no, I'm going to work 40 hours, and then I'm going to go live my life. Okay? Some of us come from generations where that wasn't the case. We were almost glorified work. We're like, man, I'm working 80 hours. What do you got? 82. What? Come at me, right? This group is like, no, I'm going to work my 40, and then I'm going to go have my life. Okay? They are striving for this balance that they see in future or previous generations wasn't there. As workplace factors contribute to stress levels, employers should stay focused on workplace mental health. I know that probably just triggered some of you because of all this talk and hype around the idea of mental health, but it is a vitally important thing to understand that both of these generations are severely concerned about mental health matters, and for some of it, it's for a good reason. We'll dive into that a little bit later as well. Approximately 50% of the respondents have denied or rejected an assignment or a job based on their personal ethics or beliefs. So they go into an interview, they have a stellar interview, they get to that question, hey, what do you want to know from us? They ask those questions, they're like, actually, I don't align with your company, I'm out, see you later. How many of you interview for your companies or are in charge of staffing for your companies or your schools? How many of you hire people? Nobody? A few of you? Have you kind of heard this similar trend? Sorry, I don't know. I just don't know if this is a good fit. I don't know if I'm feeling this place. Okay? Both generations agree that their mental health suffers from these following contributors. 1, not being recognized or rewarded adequately for their work. 2, working long hours. 3, not having enough time to accomplish their work. 4, not feeling that decisions are made in a fair and equitable way. Not getting meaning and purpose from their work. Not feeling supported by their leader. And not feeling included by their colleagues. As you look at that list, what's the common thread? Not a rhetorical question. Go ahead and shout out what you see and what you notice. What's the common thread through all of these? Self? Everybody gets a trophy? You know, y'all blame the millennials for that. My parents are the ones who raised me, y'all. Just saying. Love my parents. I hope they're watching. I'll tell them later. I love them again. All right. What else do we see? What? I need to feel valued, and I want to value other people too. That's the one I was hoping we would see. There is a deep longing in this group of people to fit in and to have a purpose-driven life. There really is. Okay? The only issue is they are very distracted, both of these generations. And we could sit here and list all the laundry list of reasons, and all of you are like, yeah, absolutely. We're putting all of that away, and we're going to talk about how we fix that instead. Okay? Going a little bit further into the millennials here, because they're a group that we know a little bit more about, here's some additional statistics on millennials. 75% claim that they are spiritual but not religious. Okay, so there's some sense of like God or ownership of a bigger idea in their life, but they don't want systematic religions anymore. Further, 68% say there is more than one true way to interpret the teachings of their religion. Oh, you follow that version of Jesus, I follow this version of Jesus. You hear how wrong that is already, okay? 64% believe that sex before marriage is morally acceptable. It is not a sin, in their opinion. 59% of millennial Christians will disconnect from the church after the age of 15. Most of them will not return to the church. 59% believe that people are eventually saved no matter what they do. I can go on living my life, doing what I want to do, and it doesn't matter, I go to heaven anyways. And so let's go to some positive here for a second, all right? This is starting to get a little heavy. 96% believe they will do something great in their lives, okay? They feel like they have a major purpose, something that they need to accomplish. 77% said that helping others was among their chief aim in life. 61% feel personally responsible for making a difference in the world. It's not our duty, it's my duty, okay? And 60% voted in the 2012 election, the highest young voter turnout ever, And those statistics stayed similar in 2016 and again in 2020. So we have this highly motivated, highly driven, highly wanting to have an impact on the world around them group of individuals. And here's the most baffling statistic of all. I didn't even put it on these slides because I didn't think I was going to use it, but I am. Only 30% of them will ever step foot inside of a church. 70% of them will go to church one time and never come back, or never step foot inside of a church. So what do we do with that? How do we close that gap? And you'll notice I kind of left out Gen Alpha here. I love Gen Alpha. For those of you who are 10 and younger in here, I love you, I care about you. But the thing is kind of 10 and younger, we're not quite sure what we're about yet, right? If you want to have some really great ideas on how to reach Gen Alpha, Pastor Kayla is over there. Her hair looks funky today. Go ask her. I'm sure she has wonderful ideas. Not my area of specialty, okay? I share all of this to understand a very simple point. When we can elevate our next-gen ministries and truly reach these large generations, 55% of the current world, we're going to be tapping into a highly motivated, highly influential, and somewhat misguided group of people who, if given the chance to engage in the process of discipleship, can truly, and I believe this with all my heart, create some of the largest spiritual revival that the world has ever seen. Okay? How do we do that? How do we purposefully engage the next generations? I want to pause here, and I want to say something again. I want little disclaimers throughout here, okay? We're going to be talking a lot today about what method do I switch to reach this next generation. Never in anything that I'm saying am I saying that we need to compromise the truth of God, okay? Change your method, not the truth. And if changing your method alters the truth, don't do that method, okay? Many churches go down that path. They don't exist anymore. You have to handle the word of truth accurately. But if there are things that are not scripturally bound into doing it a certain way, and you can change that method to connect to those generations, shouldn't we be doing it? Yeah? Okay. So, to guide us today, I have an acronym for us since we are talking about elevating Next-Gen Ministries. Elevate is going to be our acronym. 7 steps, 7 tips, 7 tricks that we can use, that we can put into play right now to connect better to millennials, to Gen Z, probably to Gen Alpha. I'm guessing the trends are going to continue, so that we can truly and purposefully engage our next generation. Okay, y'all ready for this? How you feeling right now? Were those sobering statistics? Are you all just low energy right now? Do we need to get up and do some push-ups? Wall sits? No? We laugh awkwardly, but we didn't really give a resolved no or yes? Yeah? It's okay, y'all. I teach middle school. When I ask them tough questions, they're like, I don't know. It's wonderful. You guys are great. Thanks for being good sports. First E here. And this one's going to maybe make some of you maybe a little angry or kind of think that I am a woke person up here talking, okay? But I'm not. But you need to engage them in culturally relevant topics. We need to be ready, and I know how uncomfortable some of these culturally relevant topics can be to us because they weren't things that were kind of widely accepted when we were growing up. But I promise you, if they are talking about it, it is so important to them that they will not let you become a part of the conversation to introduce truth into it unless you are willing to talk about what they're talking about a little bit. Topics like money, sex, attraction, budgeting, mental health, LGBTQ, dating, living together before marriage. Some of you just like, oh God, I don't want to ever talk to that about anybody but my kid. Okay, here's the problem, y'all, because I'm an educator and I can tell you on the education side, educators are having to share a lot of this because parents aren't. They're not. Also, I'm going to say things that might be offensive. Please come see me after, okay? It's fine. We're diving into truth together here today. So they have no idea, this generation has no idea how to engage with these topics in a biblical way because they're not allowing us to be a part of the conversation because we didn't meet them where they were, okay? Going in and having that conversation about what they believe and what they see, as weird and as cringe as it is for us, and we're just like, we really want to just throw the truth in here, it connects to them in a way that allows you into their life, where then they're going to ask you, hey, what do you think? And hey, what do you believe? Because I don't know about you all, but I look around our society today and I see a whole lot of teaching going on around those topics, don't you? Do you see a whole lot of teaching about money out there and how to play the stock market and invest in properties and do all that kind of stuff? Some of that is sound, some of it is not. Do you hear a lot on social media and in our world today in teaching on sex and what's appropriate and what's not? How about dating? How about marriage? Most of that teaching is self-focused and unrealistic and not biblically sound. So, if these topics are going to be continued to be talked about, but we're not going to be a part of the conversation because we're not learning about those, how far off are we from the truth of Jesus being completely lost in the next generation that comes up? Being culturally relevant is highly important. I am a middle school assistant principal. I walk around our building listening to what the kids are talking about often. Any of you who are at Junction City Middle School, just know I'm eavesdropping on every one of your conversations always. So if I'm within 5 feet of you, I am listening, and I'm probably going to ignore it because otherwise I'd have to write you up. All right? I know this. Okay? All educators know this. But I got to be in the loop, right? I got to know what the T is because I got to know who's dating who this minute because I know in 3 hours it's going to change and they're going to be dating somebody else. And by the next morning, there's 5 different relationships that have happened. I got to know all this stuff because I got to know what's a brewing and what's happening, all right? Through these mini listening sessions is what I've come to call them. I hear a lot of things, and I can sum up most of what I hear in their conversations to kind of 3 categories. One is stuff that I truly want to know about. Middle schoolers are curious. They want to know about the world around them. They want to know about what's going on. They want to know about what's right and what's wrong. They want to know those things, but they don't know enough about it, so they do one of 2 things. They're either like, oh, yeah, that's like Spider-Man when he saves the world, and it makes no sense, but they just want to be part of the conversation, right? So they just act like they know what they're talking about, or they're just like, it's like if I just nod my head and smile, nobody's going to question that I don't know anything, and I'm going to go Google it later. And the sponsored ad at the top of Google that's probably wrong is going to tell me the truth, and then I'm going to be informed. It's going to be great. Or the second thing that they do is, I know there is something more right than what my group is talking about, but I'm not equipped with the skill set to contradict them because I fear their judgment. That's where many of our young people who need to step up and lead stay. They are so afraid of the judgment of their peers that they won't stand up for what is right. Or lastly, in this group I love to just kind of toy with and mess with. There's my confession on stage here. They just like the drama and they like to drink the tea. They do. They're like, oh, they see a group of people congregating. They're like, what's up, guys? Hey, what's going on? Cool, yeah, all right, cool. Now I'm going to go see what's going on over here. I'm like, what were you even doing? They're like, I don't know. Nor do I. Did you learn anything cool? Yeah, what'd you learn? Again, being nosy, right? I got to know what's going on. Got to know the tea. Not because I'm a gossip. So I got to know what those 8th graders are about to be doing, right? Regardless of which category I'm hearing about, that process gave me a very clear understanding, okay? Many in our younger generations are craving ways to know what is right. They want to know what's right. They do. They want that sense of right and wrong. They want that guidance. They want that ability to know, am I on the right path? Is it connected with my purpose in life? Do I have the right purpose in life? They want to know that. They want to know how they can make a difference. They want to know how to purposefully address topics that they and their peers care about. They just don't know how. And here's our convicting question of this point. Whose fault is that? Is it theirs? Because they didn't Google the right question? In order to help them learn, we need to be informed on what's being talked about in their world. And then we need to be spiritually equipped to be able to address those topics from a biblical perspective and understand how the truth of God plays into the idea of an LGBTQ child who is struggling through that perception of self. We need to know how the truth of God interacts with somebody whose parents are going through a divorce and they don't know how to handle that, because what they should know about relationships is that they should work. Okay? For those of you who are thinking I'm a little woke in this, that's okay. I'm not. Jesus did it. I'll prove it. He spoke to Peter about taxes. He spoke to a lot of people, especially the rich young ruler, about money. He spoke consistently to the Pharisees about power and authority. He spoke about sex and prostitution and adultery. He spoke about career paths. Hey, I know you're a fisherman. Good field. Come do this instead. Right? He spoke about sacrifice and sacrificial living. He spoke about purpose. He spoke about perceptions of others in society, there was this group called the Samaritans. They were the outcasts, the people who were on the outskirts of society. And he said, we're going to go to Samaria. And they're like, what? He took them to the isolated. He spoke about food and drinking. He talked about all of these concepts that in our modern world today would be like, that's so progressive. Well, maybe it was a little bit. And that's okay. We shouldn't be timid in talking about these culturally relevant issues with our young people. And to reach the next generation, it's important that we do so because introducing the truth to their lives does something remarkable. Romans 12:2. Let's read these together. Let's get our blood pumping here again. Ready? Everybody up? Everybody up? If I see somebody not reading, I'm going to call on you to read it on your own after we all corporately read. Okay? And I have this memorized, so I'm going to be watching you guys, not the board. Okay? Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. What are we not supposed to do? Conform to the world. How are we not supposed to conform to the world? Renewing your mind. How do we renew our minds? Oh, there's a muddled answer, right? Look, we don't even know the answer to that. How do we renew our minds, people? We read the truth. And the truth will, there's one we know. The truth will make you free. So if we want our young people to have their mentalities transformed and their minds renewed, the truth needs to be in them. Paul goes on further. Here's how Paul did this. Paul's an amazing man in the New Testament. He wrote the majority of it. He says this, "For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became as a Jew in order to win more Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though not myself under the law, that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law I became as one outside the law, not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do it all for what? The sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in its blessings." Paul didn't do this nilly-willy. He didn't become things to other people and act like them just for the sake of fitting in. He did it for what reason? The sake of the gospel. If you ever find yourself being different for another person and it is not for the purpose of saving that person's soul or it goes against biblical truth, you need to stop and you need to go back. Okay? Hold on to that one right there. In order to reach people in our next generations, we have to meet them where they are. That's what Paul is getting at here. He's saying, don't compromise who you are. Notice how he said, I am not under the law. I'm under the law of Jesus. I'm not going to compromise who I am. But you know what? If they argue in synagogues, I'm going to go argue in synagogues with them. That's what I'm going to do. If they go eat a bagel every morning at Paradox Coffee, I'm going to go eat the darn bagel. All right? Don't compromise who you are, but if you can change your method to meet their need and be where they are and engage in that conversation, it's something that we need to be doing. Second, learn to be and make disciples. Learn to be and make disciples. Y'all, I don't know how this one got so confused. It's the last thing Jesus said before he left earth was go make disciples. And somehow here we are 2,000 years later, and we're still having the same conversation. I don't know what's gotten lost. I was, though, down at a model schools conference, 10,000 educators from across the nation, actually a few from across the world. We're all together down in Orlando, Florida this last week. Really enjoyed my time, picked up a lot of practical tips. Our group, we take a big group of us of like 24. Our group always like wants to just hang out together and go talk with each other. I'm like, I have you and JC. There's 10,000 other people here. I'm going to go meet them. All right, so like I go to like lunch and I like try to sit at a table with new people and hear their stories and understand who they are. Sitting with a group from Milwaukee, and we're just talking about education, and it just so happened that this group from Milwaukee is also a bunch of teachers who are believers. They had very strong faith in Jesus, and so the conversation turned spiritual very quickly. And one of the things we actually started talking about was this idea of discipleship and how it just doesn't exist anymore. Like the idea of investing in another person personally just doesn't really exist in our society anymore. And the question we started asking there at the table is the question I want to pose to you all, crowd engagement here. Why? Why are we no longer talking about discipleship, and why are we no longer engaged in that process? What do you think? Shout it out. Facebook, okay. Social media. We're too busy. We're selfish. Ooh, who just spoke that truth, convicting me? Do what? We don't know how. We're not equipped. We're insecure about it. Process of discipleship is a deeply invested one, right? And what if I mess up the person that I'm discipling? We're insecure about ourselves. Okay? Great answers, all of those. So, discipleship, though, is a very simple process, y'all. There's 2 steps to it. We're going to talk through those, and then I'm going to talk to you about why it's such a complicated process within this simple process, though. First part of discipleship we can find in the greatest commandment, Luke 10, verse 27. Let's read it together. And he answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, and with all of your soul, and with all of your mind, and with all of your strength, and your neighbor as yourself." Simple, right? Love who? God, then your neighbor, then self. Ooh, but they're a selfish generation, right? All they do is focus on themselves. Fascinating. Interesting. We're going to come back to that. Why is this so complicated then for us to do and for us to engage our young people in? Here's the answer that I would argue. Love has become very convoluted in our culture. I love my mom, love my wife, love my kids, love tacos, love donuts. Which love is right? We use them almost interchangeably, right? So this idea of what loving somebody truly is almost lost. And if we're not explicitly teaching our younger generations what the purpose of true love is, not Snow White and Prince Charming. I am watching the Once Upon a Time series right now again. Please don't judge me too hard. It's fantastic, okay? A little bit of a nerd, it's fine, okay? But true biblical love. Love with all of your heart. The heart in the ancient Greek is the whole self. It's the concept of self. It's all of who you are. It's your essence. It's what you are about. So loving God with all that you are and be, with all of your mind. That's our thoughts, our intentions, our motivations, how we think about the world. Loving him with every thought that we have. Loving him with all of our soul. Soul is a tricky word because we're like, what is a soul? Simply put, a soul is your volition. Don't be confused by the word volition. A volition is your ability to choose. Loving God with your choice. Choosing right over wrong. And then lastly, loving him with all of your strength. Every action you do, showing that love of Jesus. Does the Bible have a lot to say about all of those things, those of you who have read it a few times? Yes. So why is this idea so lost? Because we're not reading enough of the Bible with these generations. Speaking to me on that one, y'all, not to you. Love your neighbor, sacrificial service and love, and then love yourself, identity and security, and knowing who you are, okay? Having those part of it help us to paint a clear picture, but here's the hard truth, y'all. Our current world is telling one of the greatest lies in history, and they're kind of omitting the first 5 parts, and they're focusing exclusively on the last one, and the truth that they're trying to get the world to believe is that it's all about me. Even walk into Christian bookstores today and look at how many self-help books there are. They're not about the gospel anymore. They're about how do you get better as a person. Not a bad thing. You should improve. You should get better. You should be better tomorrow when you wake up than you were today. All good things. But when you start believing the message that it's all about you, you've lost. Because here's the truth. It isn't about you. It is about Jesus. And who is Jesus about? The Father and you. So if you love Jesus, who is also looked out for? You. Jesus loves you, right? Jesus loves you. He loves you. So if I love Jesus, who is also loved? Oh, look at that. It's fascinating, isn't it? And so simple. The second part to discipleship is coupled directly with it. Matthew 28, 18 through 20. We all know this one. Let's read it aloud. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey all that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always until the end of the age. I love the word lo. What a cool word. We don't use that enough anymore. English teachers, where are you at? Low it up? Yeah, let's get low back. We're going to talk about teen slang here in a little bit. As adults, Let's really confuse our teenagers and bring back some ancient words. I think that'd be awesome. All right? The younger generations needed what? Remember back to that survey? They needed purpose, and they wanted it to connect to their life around them. What greater purpose is there than getting other people to experience ultimate freedom in Jesus? Doesn't matter where you go or what you do or what job you have or the hard things that you face, if you are doing that, aren't you going to always be fulfilled? Watching another person's life become free from the things you were maybe also once captive to? Amazing. We need to be engaging them in the process of discipleship. Next, we need to expect great things from them. Okay? A word came up earlier about like selfish or entitled. I can't remember exactly what it was, and that's a good word to describe the millennial generation. We are called the entitled generation for a reason. We believe things should just kind of happen. They should just kind of be there. It's fine. Again, I wasn't the one who raised me. Sorry. Question for thought there. All right. Question for thought. Sorry, I lost my place on my notes. There we go. But if you have a high expectation of them, I promise you they're also competitive enough to meet it every time. Millennials like to win. They like to have that purpose in that direction. They will step up to that challenge that you give them. And Jesus did this to the disciples in his society as well. Look at Luke 22 real quick. They began to argue among themselves. They is his group of disciples, those who have been following him most closely, about who would be the greatest among them. Jesus told them, in this world, cultural relevance, he's engaging them in topics that are important to them, the kings and great men lord it over their people, yet they are called friends of the people. But among you, it will be different. What's the challenge? You will be different. Those who are the greatest among you should take the lowest rank, and the leader should be like a servant. Who is more important, the one who sits at the table or the one who serves? Jesus acknowledges their thoughts. Obviously, the one who sits at the table, but not here, he says, for I am among you as one who serves. Jesus gave them a great challenge and held them to an immensely high expectation, which was this: go against everything society is telling you that tells you if you don't have a title and a position and status that you're nothing, and become what they think is the lowest anyways, and through that, you will become the greatest. Can you imagine Peter sitting there? If you've ever read the Bible, you're like, man, Peter was a go-getter. He jumped in the water. He almost walked on water. He chopped a guy's ear off once to try to protect Jesus. He was a go-getter guy. Can you imagine him hearing this truth for the first time? Peter, don't be anything like them. Just go wash people's feet. Peter was like, bruh. Nah. Right? He probably just blew off that teaching at first, and he had to really rationalize it. But Jesus held his disciples to a ridiculously high expectation. And if we do the same with our younger generations of people, y'all, I know it's scary because they might fail. That's okay. It is. Because when they succeed, and they will, because 97% of them feel that they're going to make a difference in the world, and they're going to keep driving towards it, then you are going to have some of the greatest revival in church history. Vision is required. Vision is required. Proverbs 29:18, we know all this one. Where there is no vision, let's try that again. Where there is no vision, the people perish. But happy is he that keeps the law. Also, happy is he. Let's bring that one back too, English teachers. Let's get all this infused into our culture, okay? Where there is no vision, the people perish. And that's so true of this younger generation, y'all. It's the vision that is needed for our young people. They desire to have this inner longing of their life met with a purpose that is greater than themselves. They just don't know or understand what that purpose is because nobody has ever shown it to them. Nobody has ever shown them that you can go and change somebody's life, not just for their job, but for eternity. They haven't seen that. It's absolutely mind-blowing. The Deloitte survey that we looked at earlier said this about it. The majority of Gen Zs, 86%, and millennials, 89%, say having a sense of purpose is important to their overall job satisfaction and well-being. And these generations are increasingly willing to reject assignments or employers who don't align with their values And when employers took that feedback and responded positively, employee loyalty tended to be much higher. If that's what they're saying about the job place, what should be the role and responsibility of the church? Right? We're asking corporate America to engage young people in their purpose. How much more should we be engaging young people in a purpose here that lasts beyond death, that goes into eternity? It's absolutely essential that we offer that, because in other words, when millennials and Gen Z feel like they have a higher purpose, they will stick around. They will be here. They will be a part of it. So we need to do this, church. We need to be ready to cast some vision in their lives. We need to be able to empower them to complete that vision. We need to be able to kick them out of the nest and let them fail, because they will. That's the hard part. We don't want to see our young people fail. And then here's the hard part for us as adults. We need to turn the reins over to them and walk away. And let them have that purpose themselves. It's not mom and dad's faith, it's mine. It's not the pastor's responsibility, it's mine. Giving them personal ownership of the vision. Authenticity, love that word, is vital. Absolutely vital. In the technology age, millennials and Gen Z, we've been bombarded with misinformation. Here's some of my favorites. 1, Bigfoot is real. There are genuinely groups of people who do nothing but go around filming sites where Bigfoot was. Come on. The government is controlling you by putting microchips in the vaccines. Misinformation. Our technology is not that advanced, people. The moon landing was actually staged. Can't you see the strings? Oh, my favorite lie. Pepsi is better than Coke. Wrong. All kinds of crazy theories out there, y'all. Ridiculous nonsense. Misinformation is running around everywhere. Everywhere. Beyond that, these generations have also been bombarded with ads promising greatness, quick results, and empty promises. Take this pill, you'll lose 50 pounds. Took that pill, I gained 10. What are you talking about? Cost me $82 to gain 10 pounds. I could have just went to McDonald's. It would have been fine. Okay? They are also constantly exposed to the picture-perfect life through social media. What do you post on social media? Your toddler screaming and crying and throwing a fit and you having a breakdown, emotional breakdown in the middle of the floor with them? Or that nice Easter picture out in the sanctuary or foyer where you all look great and well put together and everything is awesome? Which one do you post? Anybody who says they post the first one, I'd love to see your Facebook and social media pages, please. Because it's a lie. We put our best foot forward, and that's what we always see. So then as a young person who's struggling with maybe sexual misconduct of some kind, or maybe struggling with my identity and my purpose and who I am, or my worth and my value, all I ever see in the world around me is everybody has their lives so put together. Look how great they are. And what does that say of me? Suicide is 400% more likely today than it was 20 years ago, in both boys and girls. Those of you who are teachers, you see this every day. They are desperately looking for someone to model for them that you don't have to have it all together, that you can struggle with sin and temptation too, and that life isn't just a perfect Instagram picture. They want to know that that's true. J.P. Pokluda says this again: being real is about being you and who you really are, and being honest about your imperfections. Millennials hate inauthenticity, and they can smell it from a mile away. I believe inauthenticity is the number one reason young adults are leaving the church or never show up in the first place. They think church is a place where people put their best foot forward, hide their issues and problems, talk about surface level things, and pretend to have it all together for an hour or two before going back to their normal, uninspired, no different from anyone else's lives. Ouch. If you're feeling it, don't worry, I am too. He goes on later in that chapter, though, to say this: they do want someone to follow who is earnestly and sincerely following Christ. And you need to follow Christ by knowing who you are, being who you are, and liking who you are. Because the younger generations, y'all, they can see through fake, and they hate it because they've been bombarded with fake and empty promises their entire lives, and they're done with it. They're done with it. They're just over it. Be authentic in following Christ, which means having authentic and hard conversations that probably even make us a little uncomfortable to talk about. I was just having one of those yesterday with a young man in our church. It was awesome. We had a great conversation. Got really real, though. Having a deep and important conversation. Younger generations are longing for people to be authentic about their struggles so that they have an example to follow, so that they know how to get out of those struggles as well. T, talk simply, not churchy. Put churchy in quotation marks. I don't really know what quotation marks still mean, but people do it all the time, so I figured I'd throw one in there. Talk simply, not churchy. But I think the point here is very, very important, okay? As you might have seen from this message already, younger generations are a little hesitant to come to church, right? A little bit hesitant to walk through our doors. A quick thought here I wanted for us to consider. When they do come, are we speaking a language they understand? Or are they so intimidated by our message because it's using these words that they don't understand that they're just like, you know what? That was way too hard. I'm going to leave and I'm not going to come back. Okay, so we're going to do a little exercise here. I'm guessing this is the part that was deemed unforgivable by my teenagers in the first session. So teens, if you need a potty break, this is probably a time to go so that you don't get super cringe about Artley on the stage, okay? In a minute here, I'm going to post a line or two on the screen. I'm going to read it out loud to you, and I want you to tell me what it means afterwards, okay? Y'all ready for this? You know the instructions? Yes, I do. No, I don't. Yes, I do. No, I don't. Yeah? All right, cool. All right, here we go. Yo, bruh. That might be the most sus thing you've ever done. Your Riz took a major L, and now you need a gas up. Let me start with the T. Your outfit slaying, but you acting like a real Karen. My friend kept texting me cringe, so I had to ghost him. I just felt dirty saying that. I'm not going to lie. How many of you understood every word? How many of you understood 80% of the words? How many of you from context figured out enough to realize I just want to tune out because this is completely irrelevant to me? I'm probably going to see a lot more of those hands, okay? I wonder, this is kind of fun. If I were to give you a quiz on teen lingo, you would probably pass. We probably need to have a little education on teen vocab. LOL, JK, JK, no cap. All right? But we probably need to have a little bit of education on that. When young people come into our church, though, many for the first time, maybe who are sitting, or if you're just sitting down with them for the first time to discuss like highly spiritual matters, it's imperative that you use simple and unchurchy language with them. Because I wonder how many of them feel like you just felt reading that when we start talking with them about deep spiritual issues. Sanctification, glorification, I don't know what that is. The blood of Jesus, why are we sprinkling blood on people, right? Like that's such a natural thing for us as Christians to know, but other people are like, you sprinkle blood on people in your religion? What is that? They just don't understand. We've got to teach that vocabulary. We've got to help them understand the language and the lingo. Talk very simply to them. Don't use overly churchy words, y'all, because as we saw earlier, 70% of our world is no longer churched. They don't understand the vocabulary that we're using. Keep it simple. Keep your message simple. Finally, enjoy some time outside of church. Okay, the process of discipleship is life, not just here. 70% of them aren't coming here. So where do you need to go? There. It is such a simple strategy, but it's key for them because they want that authenticity, right? They don't want to see the 2-hour put-together version of yourself. They want to see you at 7:30 bedtime with your kid on a Tuesday. When you're like, I love my child. Come here, son, it's okay. No, you're like hauling the kid on your side all the way to his bed and dropping him down, right? And then you're coming out and you're like, I need 5 minutes. My mental health. Whew. That's what they want to see. They want to see that authentic life that you're living. They want to be there to experience it with you. They want to sit and learn from people who go through life struggling just like they do. And being with them outside of church is such an easy way to do that. Go to the rec with them. Take short trips with them. Grab a meal with them. Grab a coffee with them. Do those things, and I promise you, you are going to get into their life in a way that nobody else ever has. And if you have the truth of God, you're going to be able to do something absolutely amazing in their life as you get there. We can put all of these things into practice. You have a really great shot of reaching the next generation for Jesus elevating your ministry to them and helping people see just how relevant Jesus is, especially in our modern world. We're about that here, okay? We might change our methods a little bit to reach that next group. That's okay. If we ever compromise the truth, come let us know. Please, don't let us go unchecked. Bring it to us. Because here's the deal, y'all. In the end, every one of those needs that this group says they need can be met by Jesus. Every single one of them. Purpose, identity, value, feelings of security. Every culturally relevant topic they want to talk about, Jesus has talked about it, and they want that truth. They do. As soon as you say it, they're going to be like, oh, I don't want to hear that. They do. They're lying to you. They want it. And if we can meet every one of those needs in Jesus, we should. It's what we need to be about. Let's pray. God, you're so good. Thank you that your truth is not limited to us and our perspective, that it's not limited to everything that we grew up with and the life that we are a part of and the story that you have worked through us. So God, because your truth is universal, take away all fear and timidity or insecurity or ignorance that we have about our next generations and help us to see them, God, as you see them, which is children of God. And help us and empower us and equip us and help us to put aside our own insecurities to become better equipped to reach that generation for you because they need you so desperately. We ask this all in the name and the power of Jesus. Amen.